There is a book that dismantled God, the state, morality, and humanity itself, published half a century before Nietzsche wrote a single word. Its author died in obscurity, bitten by a fly. The man who wrote it was not a prophet, not a madman, not a revolutionary. He was a schoolteacher. And the philosopher who most resembled him, Friedrich Nietzsche, never once spoke his name. His name was Max Stirner, and this video traces a single uncomfortable question through the wreckage he left behind. Two threads will haunt what follows. First, did Nietzsche build his philosophy on foundations Stirner laid, and then bury the evidence? Second, what happens to philosophy, to you, when the ego devours everything, including itself? Berlin, 1841. The Prussian capital is electric with ideas. A group of young radicals meets in a wine bar on Friedrichstrasse, calling themselves the Free Ones. Among them, Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, Bruno Bauer. These are the young Hegelians, men who took Hegel's system and turned it against everything Hegel held sacred. And then there is the quiet one, thin, bespectacled, with an enormous mustache that earns him his pen name, Stirner, from the German word for forehead. His real name was Johann Caspar Schmidt. He was born in Bayreuth in 1806, the same town where Wagner would later build his temple to German myth. His childhood was unremarkable. His father died when he was an infant. His mother remarried and slowly lost her mind. Stirner grew up surrounded by disillusion. He studied philosophy at the University of Berlin. He attended Hegel's final lectures. He absorbed the master's system and would one day detonate it from within. But unlike Marx, who would turn Hegel into revolution, or Feuerbach, who would turn God into humanity, Stirner would turn everything into nothing, into the naked I. In 1844, he published Der Einzige und sein Eigentum, The Ego and Its Own. The book hit the German intellectual world like a grenade thrown into a cathedral. The Prussian censors banned it immediately. Then, in an act of accidental irony, they reversed the ban, deciding the book was too absurd to be dangerous. They were wrong. The book was the most dangerous thing any of them had ever read, and they knew it. Marx spent 2 years writing a furious rebuttal and never published it. So what did Stirner actually argue? What was so intolerable that Marx, the man who dismantled capitalism on paper, could not bring himself to publish his response? Stirner begins with a deceptively simple observation. Every system of thought, religion, politics, humanism, asks you to serve something higher than yourself. God demands worship. The state demands obedience. Humanity demands solidarity. But Stirner asks, who put these things above you? And why did you agree? He calls them sparks, fixed ideas, sacred concepts that have colonized your mind so completely you mistake them for your own thoughts. Spooks, in the common English translation. God is a spook. The state is a spook. Human rights are a spook. Justice is a spook. Even the concept of humanity, Feuerbach's great replacement for God, is a spook. Listen to what Stirner writes. Quote, "The divine is God's concern, the human, man's. My concern is neither the divine nor the human. It is not the true, the good, the just. It is solely what is mine. This is not selfishness in the ordinary sense. Stirner is not telling you to grab more for yourself. He is telling you that every value you hold sacred is a phantom. And here's where it gets unbearable. He does not stop at God and state. He goes after morality itself. The very idea that you owe anything to anyone, He calls it a chain you forged yourself. Can you feel the resistance yet? That instinct that says, no, some things really are sacred. Some obligations really do bind. That instinct, Stirner would say, is the spook working. He distinguishes between what he calls the owner and the possessed. Most people are possessed, not by demons, but by ideas. They serve concepts they never chose. The owner, by contrast, uses ideas as tools. He picks them up when useful, discards them when not. Nothing is sacred to him, because sacredness itself is the mechanism of enslavement. Quote, the owner is the possessor of his own being. The unfree man, by contrast, is the man who has an idea above himself, whether that idea be God, or the state, or mankind. Now consider what Stirner has done. Feuerbach had replaced God with humanity. Marx would replace God with history. Stirner replaces everything with nothing, with the concrete, irreducible I. And here we arrive at the silence that has haunted Stirner's scholarship for 130 years. The silence of Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche's published works contain no mention of Stirner. Not once. Not in his notebooks, not in his letters. At least not in those that survive. And yet, the parallels are so striking that they cannot be accidental. Both reject objective morality. Both attack the concept of truth as a mask for power. Both see the individual as the only real value. Both use the metaphor of ghosts and phantoms for inherited beliefs. Both write with a fury that burns the page. Edward von Hartmann, writing in 1891, simply called Nietzsche a Stirner redivivus. Stirner brought back to life. He was not being generous. The circumstantial evidence is considerable. We know Nietzsche's close friend Franz Overbeck owned a copy of The Ego and its own. We know they discussed philosophy constantly. We know that in the 1880s, Stirner experienced a brief revival in German intellectual circles, precisely when Nietzsche was writing his most radical works. And we know something else. Something the scholar Bernd Lasker uncovered. Nietzsche's sister, Elisabeth, who controlled his archive after his collapse, was known to destroy correspondence she found inconvenient. Did she burn letters that mentioned Stirner? We cannot know. But the absence is suspicious in exactly the way a missing page in a police report is suspicious. But let us be careful here. The question of influence is not the same as the question of plagiarism. Two thinkers can arrive at similar conclusions from different directions. And there are real differences. Stirner's ego is concrete, embodied, almost biological. Nietzsche's Übermensch is aspirational, aesthetic, a horizon to move toward. Stirner says, you are already free, you have merely forgotten it. Nietzsche says, you must become what you are, and the becoming never ends. Still, the silence remains. If Nietzsche arrived independently at such similar conclusions, why not say so? Why not engage, even to differentiate? Philosophers love to distinguish themselves from predecessors. Unless the predecessor was too close, unless acknowledging him would expose the scaffolding beneath the cathedral, unless the debt was so large it could only be repaid with silence. But Stirner's importance does not depend on Nietzsche. But the ego and its own stands on its own, and its critique cuts in directions Nietzsche never went. Consider his attack on liberalism. Stirner sees the liberal promise of freedom as a trick. The state grants you rights, but who gave the state the authority to grant? You trade one master for another. The divine king becomes the democratic majority. The priest dogma becomes the constitution. The chain changes color, but remains a chain. And communism fares no better. Stirner read Marx. They sat in the same room, and saw immediately that Marx had simply replaced God with society. Another spook on the throne. Quote, "The onus of the communist is the community. The community is their supreme being, their God. They served with the same devotion as the pious serve their Lord." Marx was furious. He and Engels spent 300 pages attacking Stirner and the German ideology, more space than they gave to any other thinker in that manuscript. They called him Saint Max. They mocked his arguments, parodied his style, attacked him with the kind of venom reserved for threats you cannot quite dismiss. And then they buried it. The German ideology was never published in Marx's lifetime. 300 pages of refutation, shoved into a drawer and left for the mice. Why not publish? One possibility. Marx realized that Stirner had exposed a vulnerability in his own system, that the collective can become just as tyrannical as the individual despot, that any cause, however noble, that demands the surrender of the individual to the whole is, in Stirner's merciless language, a new religion. And religions need heretics to burn. Does this make Stirner a libertarian? A proto-anarchist? It is tempting to claim him for a political tribe, but he refuses every label. That is his deepest provocation. The anarchists claimed him, and he would have laughed. Anarchism is still a system. It still tells you what you ought to do, namely, abolish the state. Stirner has no oath. What he has instead is what he calls Eigenheit, onness. Not freedom granted by a system, but the brute fact of your own irreducible existence. You do not need permission to be yourself. Ask yourself, when was the last time you held a belief and asked, is this mine, or was it installed in me? Is this conviction, or inherited furniture? Stirner published his masterpiece, and then nothing. His life after the ego and its own reads like a deliberate erasure. His wife Marie left him. His inheritance ran out. He attempted small business ventures, a milk shop, of all things, and failed everyone. He was arrested twice for debt. He spent time in debtor's prison. The man who had declared the sovereign supremacy of the individual could not pay his rent. There is a temptation to read irony into this. The great egoist reduced to poverty. But Stirner never claimed the ego would make you comfortable, only that it was all you had. He died on June 25, 1856, at the age of 49. The official cause: an infected insect bite. A fly landed on him and it killed him. Only a handful of people attended his funeral. No monument was erected. His grave was eventually lost, reclaimed by the earth. The philosopher of the ego returned to nothing. And for decades, that was the end of Stirner. His book went out of print. His name disappeared from the philosophical conversation. He became exactly what he described, a phantom. Until 1898, when a Scottish-born anarchist named John Henry Mackay published the first biography and brought Stirner back from the dead. And suddenly the resemblance to Nietzsche, who had collapsed into madness only 9 years earlier, became impossible to ignore. Scholars began asking the question that has never been settled. But perhaps the wrong question has been asked all along. Perhaps the question is not whether Nietzsche read Stirner. Perhaps the question is why Stirner still unsettles us when Nietzsche no longer does. Nietzsche has been domesticated. He is on coffee mugs. He is quoted by self-help influencers. The Übermensch has become a motivational poster. But Stirner resists domestication. You cannot put the unique one on a mug. There is no inspirational takeaway. There is only the vertigo of looking at your own beliefs and seeing ghosts. Every generation tries to claim him. The existentialists saw a precursor. The postmodernists saw a deconstructionist. The libertarian saw a founder. He is none of these. He is the thinker who said, "The moment you turn me into a principle, you have betrayed everything I wrote. I am not a position. I am not a movement. I am only I." And this is precisely why he is dangerous. Not because he offers an alternative ideology, but because he offers the exit from ideology altogether. An exit with no landing. What do you do when every belief has been exposed as a phantom? When the last spook has been exorcised? Stirner's answer is simultaneously the most honest and the most terrifying in the history of philosophy. You live, not for a cause, not for a principle, not for humanity or God or progress. You live as the creative nothing, the nothing that creates everything from itself. Quote, "I am owner of my might, and I am so when I know myself as unique. In the unique one, the owner himself returns into his creative nothing, of which he is born." We began with two threads. The first, whether Nietzsche built on foundations Stirner laid and then buried the evidence. The record is damning, the silence louder than any citation. Whether Nietzsche read Stirner and refused to credit him, or arrived independently at the same precipice, the effect is the same. One man stands in sunlight, the other remains in the dark. The second thread, what happens when the ego devours everything, including itself? Stirner showed us. It does not collapse into nihilism. It passes through nihilism and emerges as pure, ungovernable